ahead. Frustration filled Emlyn and she frowned, ignoring the uncertainty that settled heavily in her chest. Flipping up her sunglasses, she reached for the printed map. She traced her shaking finger over the route from Greenvale, the last town she'd travelled through, and then along to the small square that was marked Hidden Valley. This was the right road, although it was hard to believe that this narrow track could lead to one of the largest working cattle stations in the Inesley River area. The station was located halfway between Undara Volcanic National Park and the tiny town of Inesley, almost 400 kilometres west of Townsville in the tropical north. Emlyn had read up on the tourist facility, the Undara Experience, where some of the lava tubes were open for public viewing. The caves and tubes on Hidden Valley had not been explored and were not part of the national park. After another kilometre along this track, she should go around a sweeping curve past the river, where the homestead would be on her left. With a shake of her head, Emlyn put the map onto the dashboard. Despite only being mid-afternoon, it was quite dark. For the first time since she'd picked up the hire car, her unease grew, moving up her spine and making a home at the base of her neck. The tension spread to her temples. A headache threatened, and her arm ached as it always did when she was tired or stressed. For a fleeting moment, she considered digging out a paracetamol capsule, but shook her head. She'd had enough painkillers and antidepressants over the past months to last a lifetime. A simple headache wasn't going to kill her. As soon as she was settled in, she'd relax, and a good night's sleep would put paid to any tension. With a determined set to her lips, she started the car and drove carefully down the track. Travis Carlyle, the property owner, had assured her that there would be someone at the homestead to meet her and take her across to the accommodation. His email assurance had been at odds with the disinterested tone of his voice in the 3 brief telephone conversations they'd had during the 3 months of planning. Making his preference to organise details by email very clear, it had seemed that Carlyle had done his best to delay the start of the research, which originally had been scheduled for late October. Carlyle had always had a reason each time he'd postponed the start date. It was the first time Emlyn had been involved in negotiation with property owners, which was usually coordinated by the university. It hadn't been an easy experience. The delays now meant that their arrival coincided with that of the green season, when the rainfall could potentially be high, and they would have to work quickly as the threat of flooding in the tubes would hamper their efforts. The initial agreement was for a 3-month minimum stay, and the 6 team members would be living in the dongas in the old resource centre. The road ahead curved as she'd expected, and as soon as she left the river, relief eased the ache a little as a homestead appeared, perched high on the hill just past the fork in the track. The sun broke through the heavy cloud for a few seconds, and she caught a glimpse of water past the house. Gripping the wheel, Emlyn took the right-hand turn that led up to the building and pulled the car up outside the gate of the small house yard. Although there was no obvious need for a gate, the dilapidated fence did little to separate the front yard from the road. The building was surrounded by acres of dry, brown grass, broken only by dead tree stumps and the rusting bodies of old cars. A water tank at the side of the house leaned drunkenly on uneven posts. She shook her head. This was supposed to be the main house of one of the largest pastoral stations in North Queensland. Maybe this was a worker's house, and the main homestead was further ahead. She glanced at the map on the seat and wondered what to do. Grey and box-like with flat fibro walls, the place looked to be uninhabited. David would have smiled and called it a doer-upper. She closed down that line of thought before it could take root in her tired brain. A couple of small windows sat either side of a front door that was located at the top of a flight of stairs. As Emlyn looked up, the late afternoon light left dirty blood-red shadows on the rusting roof, and one of the curtains twitched. She blinked and then stared.